There's nothing new to say anymore. My name is Oluwabi. I work with UVA as a IT infrastructure administrator. Luckily, my bank is not one of those banks that have had issues recently, and I wouldn't say we're doing anything differently or maybe we're smarter than the others. I would say maybe we've not just done the kind of migration that the others have done recently. And in Nigeria today, a lot of things we tend to grow up with, if we're being honest with ourselves, because we tend to get even the simple things wrong in this part of the world. Migration is a journey, and no one embarks on a journey without, first of all, counting the cost. Even the Bible says, no one builds a house, right, without counting the cost. So, a lot of times, we just wake up and say, we want to do migration. And management starts worrying everyone, okay, when are we starting, without actually, like everyone has said, knowing the nitty-gritty of where you are at, why you want to do the migration, and defining the success factor. The one that baffles me most is the fact that most times we don't even know the success factor. We don't even know if the migration has been successful or not until end users start complaining, right? Because we don't even know what the success factors are. So, essentially, inadequate planning and assessment is a major problem. So, most times we get the scoping wrong, we get the capacity planning wrong, the dependencies, right? Knowing that this application has a lot of modules that interface to make the application work. And like we said, what the issue may be that is because most times the people that haven't designed these applications have left, and we are very poor with documentation, extremely poor. Everybody is guilty of this in this part of the world. So, in a situation where you don't have proper documentation, how are you going to have a successful migration? How do you even know dependencies of your applications? You really can't tell. Another thing is a lack of proper migration strategy. So, for example, how do you determine if you want to go from a monolithic base to microservices? How do you want to determine if you want to go back from microservice to monolithic? So, microservice has become a buzzword, for example. Everyone is saying, oh, microservice. It does not mean that microservice is beneficial for your own use case. FlexQ works better, for example, on microservice, and Finacle may not work better. Have you done proper tests to be sure of what you're doing? And while we're sitting there, we're also talking about we're talking about the different methods of doing database migration, and we're breaking it down, right? Each has its own use case, depending on how huge your workload is or how much downtime you can tolerate, right? So today, most banks now do transportable table space. Why? Because for most of the large banks, transportable table space has worked for their huge databases, right? So most banks just decide to adopt that, right? But we also have other methods of also doing the migration, you understand? So it doesn't mean it has to be a specific way, right? So you also use your import-export, right? You can also use your coding depending on your use case. Another thing I will mention is insufficient skill sets, right? Where you have testers who also don't know the right things to test or the specific things to test, and you have QAs who do not even know what to also check. So that way you may not be able to define or test your success factors. Then sometimes there could be a gap between the expectation of the management and the technical team. And that could be a problem sometimes, where the management just feels this migration can be done in 3 months based on what another bank has done, right? And the technical team who are responsible for doing this migration tells them, oh, from our own assessment, this can be done in, at best, 7 months. And the management team will say, no, we cannot accommodate that kind of time, and end up rushing everyone. And sometimes this leads to failures, right? In one of the banks, from what I heard, one thing that really happened is because the management actually rushed the testers. So, sometimes the migration is not even the issue. The migration is successful. But all the integrations, third-party integrations, that's where the challenge is. So they didn't get that right. Why? Because they rushed it, right? Because they just wanted to go live. And that was the fault of the management, not the technical team. Yeah. And another bank that I won't mention, I think the mistake they did was doing 2 things at the same time. I think it is absolutely wrong to be changing infrastructure and be changing applications at the same time. I think it makes sense to do one at a time. You can go from for example, AIX to Linux. You wait and test and see it works fine before you start changing from the first to So in a situation where you are doing everything at the same time, you may tend to rush it and you end up not doing your due diligence, and it leads to massive failures like this. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the panelists. And I think when I was being introduced, so the previous life, I worked for one of the Big Four for 4 years, 2014 to 6 years, 2014 to 2020. And I have been involved in quite a few core banking transformation or transformation of banks, investment bank, commercial banks. I did it in Nigeria and Lagos. So I understand what you're saying, and I think your contribution just aligns with my experiences as well. Especially the one around not just buying IT products for the sake of it, whether it's core banking. You look at the process, look at your business, your products, before you start going to buy core banking application platforms. It's a mistake I've seen so many times. Tier 1 banks, 2 of them I did projects for as a consultant, the same mistakes. They travel overseas, talk to the vendors, they come back with the product, this is what we're implementing. They haven't checked internally with the product team, the processes, So it's a common thing. And I think that's one of the things that we need to change as well in these clients. Management is management, but the IT guys, the consultants, people that know have the knowledge and experience, have the advisory group. But they hadn't given the opportunity to perform, and they rushed at one time, and I agree with that as well. Talked about weak governance as well. So change management, e-governance, monolithic versus microservices. Another very big one, something new is happening. Oh, let's go and buy this. Let's roll this out. And I think the impact is felt more now because of digital channels. If you can't transfer or do transactions or pay bills on your app, it's a big problem. Why do I want to go into a bank and want to start doing transactions, right? So the impact is felt very quickly. Back in the days, if you were doing a back office transformation, customers don't have any idea of what you're doing. But now the impact, like you said, about integration, testing on the channels and stuff, it's immediate, it's instant. And your reputation goes down very quickly too. So many lessons to be learned from what's happened in the last few months in Nigeria. We've kind of overcome it and everybody's moved on, right? It will happen again until we change some of these fundamentals that we discussed here on this panel. And I think that's very important for decision makers who are in this room. Because, like Tom said, it's not, maybe some of this stuff is not peculiar to Nigeria. When I know of a bank or 2 banks I worked for in the UK in the past, right, that they're still running the same core banking infrastructure for the last 30, 40 years. Did not change anything. So what they've done is, once they get new products in, they will have another core banking application that will build the new products onto, then move it onto those platforms. All the old products are still running on core banking. So they have old and new, and they're serving different product lines. So they're different strategies. So we have to find things that work for us in this climate. What we want to do is just scrap the whole thing and then new. Banking is complex. Plenty of products, protocols, all sorts. So we always like new shiny things in Nigeria. It's brand new. There's nothing wrong with transforming your business or modernizing, right? But we have to do it the proper way. So I'm going to touch on sustainability, which is something that